All right, all set.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Matt has a work commitment, so he asked if I would mediate this unruly crowd. So I'll mediate this unruly crowd. I think the way we left it last time is we gave Brian a little bit of homework. We also left it, I was going to kind of review the very tentative siting plan with Concom. I did talk to the Concom chair, and I think we're well within state and local regulations. Our local regulations are actually a little more stringent than state regulation, but we remain with this project as it's cited. We still remain within our local, well within our local regulations. So I will turn it over to Brian, and he can go through what he has designed.
Okay, this is the September 2nd plan. So this was the plan that was sent out, and you were able to comment on it. And most of the comments were positive. I think the way it was designed around the buffer zone, not knowing whether it's a vernal pool or not a vernal pool, we're just assuming that it could be. So, and the fact that we can't get confirmation until the spring says let's just deal with it to get it maybe into the hands of the public, so we don't even have to consider whether it's a vernal pool or not. So what we did with this is you can see that the exiting onto Pleasant Street is not directly across the street from the side street. We do have an offset intersection there. It's something we were trying to avoid, but we can't avoid with this layout. I think if the project goes forward, there's always a chance then to reconfirm this buffer zone. If it doesn't happen to be a vernal pool, we can easily just see if we can straighten this out again. But the concept is going to stay pretty much the same, but we did modify it slightly. And this is a September 14th plan. And so this is the one that we've incorporated some comments that were received on the earlier plan. So I'd like to just address this plan, the September 14th plan. The exiting onto Pleasant Street's the same, but what's been developed along Pleasant Street is an entry exit lane for public use. So public would be coming into the site on the right lane, be able to come through the site. Public parking is available here. Public parking is available here. You get toward the rear of the site, then it becomes staff parking. There would be do not enter signs here for official vehicles only. So official vehicles, fire ambulance apparatus could come into this area, either transfer through the site to get to the front apron, or come into the bays from the rear and use those for drive-through. The third lane that was developed is an egress only lane for fire personnel. So you no longer have to mix apparatus with private vehicles. In addition to the lane exiting from the apparatus bays, we did create in this area a cut through. So any returning apparatus coming onto the site would come onto the site and then would have the ability to cross over and get into the apron area. So if you wanted to come in with vehicles, turn them around, back them in, you still have the capability of doing that, while you could still migrate through the entire site. This just gives you another option to get through. This would also be signed for do not enter, emergency vehicles only. So public would be not encouraged to make that transfer over, but it would be for returning apparatus and vehicles, emergency vehicles only, through this area of the site. We don't know exactly without engineering what we're going to need for culverts, but we talking with the soil scientist, he feels that this crossing could be with culverts and then fill over the culverts to create a level entry from Pleasant Street across the culverts and then onto the site and into the parking area. So it's not a bridge. It would just be a series of concrete culverts probably to make sure that the water still flows from east to west along this area. But this would get engineered further when we get more data on the site. But we have to do something here in this area of wetland. So as far as public parking, we have visitor spaces for 24 cars plus 2 handicap. We have fire parking in the rear of 23 spaces. We have 17 here. We have another 6 spaces over here. But what we've added to the plan would be another 9 covered outbuilding spaces, which would be 9 spaces that you're not seeing here, but you'll see in plan, that you could have vehicles undercover, but not inside. And we'll go over this outbuilding plan in a little more detail in a couple slides. We have a nice area in front of the building to have walk entrances and areas to the front door, sidewalks around the building. And we have eliminated the playground, but still have indicated a passive recreation area to the rear. This was something that we received an email that they felt it was still something that we should be showing as far as the public development of that site for some type of passive recreation, although it's not a playground. We are still pretty close to what we were looking at for the back limits of development on the site with the residential properties. So I think we've accomplished that goal. Where we're developing the site is really next to this stockyard of supplies. So I think we should be good with neighborhood impact. The outbuilding actually helps with that because we're providing a dark back to the property. These residential units, if they're looking across, this outbuilding would be a dark structure for them. We could put up additional fencing. It just depends on how you want to develop this passive recreation, but we can screen off this parking area also from the neighborhood. So I think this accomplishes the goals of the building and the goals of the site. And we were encouraged when Michael, you called and talked about conservation, saying that while we're impacting wetlands, it seems to be a manageable impact. And if we are taking wetlands, we might need to restore wetlands, which means if we are taking areas of designated wetlands, we may have to replicate or duplicate areas of the site which are not currently wetlands, but could be made into wetlands. So we have some ability to take but replicate, and that may have to be part of the solution with developing this site further. Also, there was a slope to this site. As we know, this is toward the wetlands is low, and toward the neighborhood to the west or to the eastern border, it's high. So there will be a cut into this, a cut and fill to level off this site. So we are still anticipating some retaining walls on the west side and some retaining walls on the east side to get this leveled out. We don't want apparatus to be on any severe slopes. They're better off if you have minimal slopes in the area of aprons and just moving apparatus. So we're not creating a slope here that's going to be difficult to manage, but we'll do that through retaining walls. That's why we are staying a little bit away from the property lines to start to develop an area so we can cut and then develop areas that we can fill.
Any issues with snow removal?
No, snow removal you could push off to the side. We just have to make sure that the areas of grass could be areas of snow storage, and you'd have a plowing plan to manage the snow. But snow is not an issue for the wetland. Even
I was looking at it more from fencing or retaining walls, if they would cause an issue, if we had to put any type of supports or things like that, that wouldn't cause an issue.
It shouldn't. You should have areas to to push in addition to the retaining walls.
Okay.
The outbuilding has grown in square footage, but I've got to explain how this is all happening. The area in the front half is covered but not enclosed. It's very similar to the Lakeville plan that was distributed. So we have 9 parking spaces that are designated for vehicles that could be undercover but not inside. The wall that separates the parking area from the rear storage, that encloses an area of heated and ventilated storage. That's heated and ventilated, but it's not air conditioned. And I'll blow this up a little more. We also have put the generator inside this outbuilding because we are concerned about noise, and having the generator inside, we can eliminate the weatherproof enclosure. We can contain the noise, and it really extends the life of the generator if you can get that inside instead of an exterior pad mount generator. So that's part of the outbuilding. We have put 5 overhead doors lined up with the parking spaces. So you could grab and go very conveniently without having to maneuver things to get things to an overhead door. You could line up your gear so that if you need bay items in bay 3, you go to bay 3 and you hook up and go. Everything that's in the front, as far as bays 1 through 9, you're controlling those vehicles also. So you wouldn't have public in those areas. It would be fire vehicles or fire personnel. So it's not a hindrance to get to the equipment that's behind, but you'd have an area to grab and go. We have a double door on parking space 2, which brings you into just open storage. This could be anything from snow blowers to ATVs to anything that's portable, getting in and out. And then we have an area at the end that's open storage, but this is covered and enclosed, not heated or ventilated. So this gives you more options for just putting things under cover, protected, not open to the weather, but things under your control. So this gives you, so the building is over 5,000 square feet, but it's only half of that is building that is enclosed. The rest of it would just supplement your parking and give you a carport structure.
What does that compare size-wise to that 5th bay we looked at?
It's actually more square footage than your 5th bay. The 5th bay is actually, Chief, what you'd have in the enclosed portion of the outbuilding. But the covered portion adds to that 5th bay dimension.
Are we less money or similar money to that bay?
You're considerably less money. This is a much more affordable way to provide what you're needing to get enclosed. One, because you're not building the volume. This is a 1-story structure where an apparatus bay is really 2 stories in volume. With the apparatus bay, you're going to be putting in air conditioning, where this, you're going to ventilate it and heat it. This is a less wall construction, less roof construction. So it's considerably less dollars per square foot to accomplish it this way than if you're putting a 5th bay. So
Brian, can I just ask a question? Is there a reason you wouldn't, even though it's not going to be heated, is there a reason you wouldn't put garage doors on the front portion of that outbuilding?
to put garage doors for the vehicles.
Right.
We looked at what we needed to get inside, and I think we've accomplished what we needed to get inside. I think if you're going to do the whole thing as garage doors, I mean, obviously it's doable.
Well, I'm just wondering, I'm thinking about, leaves and debris that's going to blow in.
If we're looking at this, what we used as an example was Lakeville. And in Lakeville's setup, this allows us the command vehicles, like you'll notice in the front, you'll notice at the police station, we have to leave those idling in like a snowstorm. You have to leave them idling just because you're trying to keep the snow off of them. If we have this type of setup, we can put them in, or light towers or signboards, we can put them in these parking spots and be able to pull them out immediately without any type of hindrance. But they still have the protection from weather and sun, so we don't basically lose lifespan on them. That was one of the savings on doing this, but it also gives us the option if we had to secure something, the side-by-sides, the trailers, the boat, the ATV, that type of equipment you wouldn't want out in the weather, and you'd want secure so somebody doesn't take it for a ride. That was one of the reasons to look at this. And when I texted Brian on the pictures, we happened to be down there. I texted him the pictures and he called me laughing. He goes, I designed that building. So basically this is a very similar aspect. Going down, it fits everything we need and it's less money. That's kind of the benefit of it all.
So this is great because it's already been designed.
Correct.
That's right. I got the drawings already done. Actually, I designed it and Norm Whitaker built it. So
There you go.
you already have,
Great, Mike. We're saving money all the way around.
you've already got a design build solution right here in Bridgewater. So that's, as far as the bays, with the 4 bays, we have shown vehicles in the bays. And these were the vehicles you were looking to get into the bays. But this also includes some cars in here. So the cars could be back at that outbuilding. They could be in the bays. It gives you some expansion. For the front line, it gives you 2 engines, a tower, and an ambulance at the front line. The tower could be a drive-through bay. All of them are drive-through bays. It just depends whether you have them all facing forward or some facing front and rear. But it gives you 2 engines. You have 3 cars.
The tower, 2
3
ambulances.
3 ambulances there. It gives you the tower in the front for training. And I've got an example that I want to show you on that. We do have the 50 turnout gear lockers. So that was mentioned before as being a number to shoot for. So that we really haven't made any changes on this plan other than indicating the sizes of what you currently have and how they fit within the bays. So we know the depth. These are actually longer bays than just a double deep bay. You see, and we can stack 3 vehicles deep because you have a typical double deep bay is 80 feet. This is about 93 feet. So you have an extra long double deep bay. So it gives you the ability for 3 ambulances instead of just 2 ambulances in this bay dimension.
Is that bay dimension spanned by truss or is that done with columns and truss?
No, there'll be some columns. We actually think the columns help you in the interior. It brings down water, utilities. So there will be some columns, but it will be a truss roof on top supported by columns. And then upstairs, the comment about upstairs was we did extend the quiet corridor as an option for expansion into the future space in addition to the corridor has expansion into the future space. So we still have the same number of bunks. We're at 48 for property lockers up here. Access onto the mezzanine, access down to the apparatus bay from the 2nd floor. But this is all future expansion and it gives you a built-in expansion capability for a lot less. Again, if you're spending your money wisely, this is money well spent now because it's only going to be more expensive whenever you're looking to grab that space later. If you had to put an addition on the building, you see how the site is pretty challenged for expansion left and right, and you'd only be able to go back. And this gives you expansion, I think, right where you might need it the most, on the firefighters floor. So I think that's a good add for the project. Now I'm going to show you a new share. And when I talk about this training tower, if you're not familiar, we've done training towers. This one's the one that we did in East Hartford. And this is something that I was thinking similar to what you were requesting in Bridgewater. It has a little balcony on the top so you can come out, and it has hooks and structural steel so you can rappel. You can rappel down and come into openings that all these openings swing open along the front wall for rappelling down or getting into closed spaces. It gives you surfaces for ladders to go up the side. It has ventilation on the top so you can exhaust the space, so you can fill it with smoke, and you could exhaust the smoke from the top. But it gives you these smooth surfaces, so the smooth surfaces are good for ladders. But another fun thing about this is the interior of that training tower. So it's a great metal grate stair that goes up. So if you're spraying water in here, it just goes through the stairwell. It gives you that surface. The circle that you see here is on the first landing. It's for concealed space training. So you can actually utilize that as if it's a manhole and used concealed space training to go through. And then that's
Like a tripod drill?
Yeah, that's from the first landing down. So you can set up your tripod, concealed space right down through there. These these grates here are hinged so they can swing up and swing out of the way, because straight up at the top, there are hooks for hose drying too. If you want to actually hang hose in here, you can hang hose, and right at the bottom of all this, because of the water, there's a big catch basin, and it takes the water right out. Up at the top, there is ventilation. As they said, they use this for smoke, so they could fill this and ventilate it pretty quickly if they need to ventilate the smoke out, so they can control the smoke.
You guys put a lot of thought into that, Brian. That's unbelievable.
So we're thinking something along the same lines. Masonry interior on this, so you could spray it all down, get it all wet. It just dries out. You're ready for the next day. So that's what the whole concept of this training tower gives you: the ability to dry hose, but the ability to do a lot of training through stairs, through concealed spaces. So that's what we are considering for Bridgewater in that tower space.
Does all that ability for training add a lot to the expense, or is it pretty much a push as far as the cost as opposed to a stairwell? Because this is unbelievable.
I think for the cost of what you're looking at, the ability to train in this is what you really gain.
Oh, definitely.
And you do it on site, so you don't have to go anywhere. So yeah, the cost of this stair is more than a regular stair, but it's all galvanized steel. It's all drainable. You can see in the picture there is somebody walking up these stairs right here. So everything just drains right through.
So it's a capital expense, but if you really look at the life expectancy of the station, and you look at the operational savings from not having to travel to do that kind of training, those are the kinds of trade-offs that you have to think about. So it doesn't take long, it doesn't take very long to add up, whatever the overtime and the straight time and whatever, training budgets over the course of 30 years, and then translate that into, what the savings would be from just expending a little more capital when you're building the thing. Generally you do that kind of analysis, and it makes more sense.
I think it's fantastic.
Is there any way to incorporate standpipes into there?
Yes. Yes, we have them at the top. We have them throughout. Yes.
Awesome.
Yep. So you have water supply in here too.
While we're on the subject of stairs, I got a question, and I know I'll get a couple chuckles out of this, but maybe it's just the 10-year-old boy in me. But and I've noticed in a new couple new stations. Brian, what are you seeing for like installations for fire poles? Yes, no, maybe.
Fire poles, it kind of ebbs and flows. Fire poles were great 10 years ago. And then from, 10 to 20 years ago, people were wanting fire poles. And then there was claims of injuries and insurance claims, and people were getting concerned about the injuries associated with fire poles. Well, in the last 5 years, they're becoming popular again. And they're kind of thinking that the injuries were kind of misreported on if it was too tall, people might get injured. So if you're trying to slide 30 feet on a pole, you're going to make it injured. But if you're just going one floor on a pole, firefighters are finding that the response time is that much faster on a pole than a stair. So they're coming back. They're actually making a return.
Is there any way to do that off the mezzanine into the garage bay from the second floor?
Yes.
All right, let's do it then.
I can see the reedy pole is gonna be a thing.
Yeah.
Still talking about sliding on the pole, not
Brian,
dancing on the pole, right?
Brian, don't disappoint me. You're getting me excited here.
Well, yeah.
Casey's excited too. Look at that face right there.
If you asked me 7 or 8 years ago, I would have said no. They're phasing those out, but they're coming back. And I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but
Well, I mean, it would probably be the safest place to come on off the corridors, right? If you can go to the map and go right to the mezzanine, right? And slide down where the mezzanine, right?
yeah, it'll put you right where you want to be for your gear.
Is there any way we can maybe put a rendering or something just to have it like for the future or?
Yeah.
Perfect. Is there any objections to that? Not hearing any.
Okay, here's my Lakeville design. This was how Lakeville uses them for cruiser parking, and the reason that they have them there for cruisers is snow and ice. And in addition to snow and ice, it's overheating of the vehicles in the summertime. Now you're putting so much electronics into your vehicles. The summertime heat and the cabin temperatures are getting a little excessive for the electronics in the vehicles. So this also now gives you a summertime benefit for not overheating the cabs and the interior spaces because of the radios and the computers that they have in the vehicles. So they started out as just being a wintertime benefit, but they're becoming more and more a request for year round. So it would be a similar idea for your fire vehicles. And if you needed to idle them, you can idle them. They're outside. They're not inside. If you are going to be putting vehicles inside, then it adds a component to the interior of the space that you have to by code put trench drains and drain those to grease oil separators. And so in Lakeville, it was determined that they wouldn't have vehicles inside. Well, I saw a picture just recently. I think there's a vehicle inside, so I didn't see that. But this was
What
the
picture? What picture are you talking about?
I don't know, but this was the concept. It's worked well for them. And the last picture I took was when there was still construction debris in there. So we lined the interiors just with plywood and painted plywood. That way they could attach anything they wanted to the walls. Didn't have to worry about where's the stud and just go right to the wall because they knew everything's plywood. It's fully insulated. We have unit heaters in the ceiling that are vented, so it's heated. And then this is a ventilation ductwork. So it does ventilate the air, but it does not air condition the space. But this is kind of just the same thing that you could have for those things that don't need to be in a fully conditioned apparatus bay, but you have electric out here for recharge. You can bring plumbing out here if you needed it. It is heated and insulated. So this was the concept for the outbuilding, just to give you more.
But by code, Brian, you're not required to do all of the drainage and separators because you're not parking vehicles in that space.
That's correct.
But you can park, trailers, obviously.
That's correct.
Anything that's not motorized.
That's
Okay.
correct. And the code is pretty vague when it says vehicles. I think it assumes it's a car, but not a gator or an ATV or things like that. It depends on the community, whether the inspectors are calling those vehicles or not. But we
You know
try-
a guy, Mike.
Yeah, it's nice to know somebody. But it just says vehicles. So while the overhead doors are there, you can obviously pull a vehicle in here, but it was permitted as storage. So any comments on the plans, site plans? Because the next thing we need to do is talk about the elevations. What do we want this building to look like? And my next step is to send this out to a cost estimator. And the cost estimator is going to take all of the schematic designs that you see for site plan, floor plan, but I also have to send him an elevation or rendering on what the outside of this building is going to look like. And he'll factor all of those building materials into the solution. So I'm going to do a quick quiz for the people who are looking. I have 10 images of new fire stations. Some of them are ugly as hell. Some of them, you might say, I never want to see that picture again. Some of them you might say, okay, I kind of like the materials, but I don't really like the exterior solution. Materials is something I really want to get an idea what you want it to be built of. And then other pictures you see here, you might say, oh, that would look great in Bridgewater. So if you have a quick reaction, I want to know on a number of 1, 2, or 3. 1 being, well, you can make it a 1 bit. Let's say 1 is I hate it. 2 is I can consider it. And 3 is I really like it. And this is, you do this quickly. And if you give me a quick score, I can kind of get an idea what the architecture for Bridgewater wants to be. So I'm going to run through these without scoring first. So I'm going to give you a picture of all 10. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're all fire stations. We can do any of these.
9,
But it's a quick reaction. It's your gut.
3, 5, 6, and 9.
6 and 9.
I'm going to go through all 10 of them again. Now, quick reaction. Number.
No.
No,
No.
1,
We're hearing kind of ones.
1,
1.
Never want to see it again.
1.
Never want to see it again.
no,
Nope.
1.
1. Yes,
3.
2,
3.
Yeah, I think this one, if you take off this second story, take that off, look at this area over here. It's very traditional, has brick elements, has a 2-story end on this side, and then has bays coming off of it on this side. If you just kind of take off this top, I that's kind of where I was at, with kind of 4 bays with kind of a 2-story element on this side. So
Classical look?
more 2s and 3s on this one.
No,
One,
no.
one,
These are made famous like Seattle Fire and stuff like that, Chicago Fire.
Yes.
three,
No.
One.
one,
I got it. So 6 and 9. So kind of in this, but you see with this tower, they spent a lot of money on this tower, but they didn't really incorporate it into a real training solution. I think it's on this, it's really probably just for hose. And you really can't seem to get much circulation around it or ladders around it, but I think yours is going to be a better solution. But it's going to have an element that's going to be a better training solution. Are you drawn toward the arches?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, traditional brick. Yep.
And then this one doesn't have arches. It has an arch that has the connector right here, has an arch. But I kind of like this traditional look in the front. And I'm not saying I'm going to copy this, but I'm just getting a sense of where Bridgewater wants to be.
Brian, what are you seeing the most in the new stations? I'm noticing a trend right now with folding doors, not the.
Yeah, I was going to
traditional
bring that
garage.
up. Folding doors are twice the cost of overheads. These folding doors are twice the cost. But if you're asking the rep who sells these folding doors, he's going to tell you all the reasons why you should have them. It's easier to see that the opening is clear. It gives the driver a better sense of whether the door is all the way up or all the way out of view. It opens faster than an overhead door, so there's a speed associated with it. If you like all those things, then you have to pay twice the cost of the overhead door. They're becoming more popular because time is seconds, seconds is time, and the drivers know that the doors openings open and clear faster. And in the overhead doors, you're kind of in a rush to get out. And if you're in a rush and the door's not fully open, it's taking stuff off the top of the truck. And that's what the damages occurred.
I think what we've run into, Brian, the most, and not that we haven't backed into them or hit them, if they've inadvertently gone down, is the lack of maintenance that we're able to put into them in regards to trying to keep them up. Like some of the door openers are 13 to 15, 18 years old, and these doors go up several times a day. That's been more of the damage or the issue with them going up or down. And if the call is initiated, even with those guys on the main floor, those doors should be up before they even get to the truck. It would be the maintenance of the doors after the fact, when they're up for a length of time.
And I think either door has maintenance associated with it.
That was what I was gonna ask, is there, if it's double the cost, is it double to get it maintained or fixed or taken care of, or God forbid replaced?
It's a more specialized product, so I think your parts and pieces are going to be a little longer to get. If you're an overhead door, they're kind of more readily available. If you need an operator, they're kind of more readily available to get them up and get them replaced.
When you say double the cost, any idea what a, I don't know, 16 by 16 door is worth?
It could go from 15,000 for the overhead to 30,000 for the bifolds per opening.
Wow.
Yeah, and you need 8 of them.
I like the glass window doors. On that station 9, you can't tell, can you, if that's glass or not? On the
I
9.
agree though. I think the glass doors with the brick exterior look sharp.
Is there any cost difference in heating with glass or with the steel? Do you get more of the benefit long-term the other way?
No, the technology in the glass is pretty good. I think you want to go for the appearance. If you're looking for glass, I mean, the quality of the door is something. If you want, overhead doors are getting, sometimes they get a bad rap because you bought the cheapest one out there, and wind and rain on those are a problem because the glazing seals aren't always tight when you have the glass inserts. If you get a better quality door, which is what we'd be specifying, the manufacturers have done a good job with getting the seals correct, and you don't get glass failures as much anymore. But with the thermal separation and the gas-filled insulated panels, they do a pretty good job for insulating.
What would be the reason not to go with glass, Brian?
Firefighters.
Yeah, it's something more to maintain, and as far as keeping that product looking good.
Is it more intrusive? I'm just thinking, potential neighbors or something. Is it more intrusive? The light more intrusive, or is the light sort of toned down in the evening?
Well, we have done glass in the front and only glass vision panels in the rear for that purpose, in some departments also. So it does, there's more light that comes from the interior to the exterior through the glass doors. But it's going to be a lit site too, though. You're going to have site lighting. There's going to be other light that's going to be onto the aprons. I look for snow slide is what I look for at the aprons too. That we're trying to design something that's not going to slide snow right over the doors. So I think I'm going to incorporate more dormers so we can kind of shed snow and shed water, so it's not coming straight over the doors.
When you do that, do they overhang the front of the roof on the bays like that by a foot or 2 feet to buy that space?
Yes. Yeah. I'm not a fan of internal gutters. I think internal gutters might work well for the first 5 years, and then they become a headache for the department for forever. So I think exterior gutters and downspouts, they're there for a reason. You can clean them, you can maintain them. They seem to work better than the internal gutters that you can never then get to. You see external gutters, downspouts on this picture. It does add an element on the outside of the building, but maintenance-wise, it's just easier to clean and maintain than if that downspout went into the building and then down through the exterior wall cavity. And then you might have a leak, but that leak is very hard to get to. If there was an ice dam or something that happened and split the seam, then it's very hard to get to. So this has metal roofs and snow guards. See the snow guards, but it still has the ability to shed snow and ice, right down onto the apron.
The metal roof, 50-year roof, is that what is worth?
Yeah, yeah.
Is there a benefit to going to metal with metal rather than asphalt, or if it's a flat roof, rubber, obviously?
Well, your first cost goes up, but your long-term costs go down. People avoid them just because they don't like the first cost. And well, we could put shingles up there for a lot less and get a 30-year, or some say lifetime, but they're going to give you a 30-year commercial warranty on it. But you'll get longer life out of a metal roof than an asphalt roof. It's just going to increase your first cost.
Is it like a double the money thing to purchase that?
No, it's probably 25% up. The wild thing about these projects right now, I don't know if you're experiencing it with any of your other projects. I know your elementary school was bid at a good time, but the problems that we're finding right now is labor shortages and supply chain is making all of the bids just crazy numbers right now. And I'm going to be sending this out to my cost estimator, and the only thing he's saying he can do at this point is compensate for what he's seeing. So the numbers are coming back just scary high because the cost estimators want to be conservative. They don't want to say it's going to be a regular number only to have the municipalities have sticker shock when the bids come in. But it's going to create sticker shock, whether you see the number early or late. What's happening right now is not favorable for construction.
Brian, that's one of my questions for you too, is if we're seeing sticker shock like that, should we kind of go back to some of the, some people just get a list of, like, I know, for instance, I know like a big hot ticket item for the firefighters is at least that the kitchen is commercial grade. Is that something that you're seeing kind of trouble with, like getting certain type of ovens, stuff like that? You know what I mean?
There's a project right now, they put a deposit, they paid for two commercial refrigerators in March, and they're still looking for them. But it's not just commercial appliances. It's roofing products, it's steel, it's aluminum, it's drywall now is added to the list. Not only materials, but laborers are in short supply. So it's a double whammy on the contractors right now. Contractors are, the only way they're compensating is to say, pay me. And it's not a good answer, but they're kind of in the driver's seat with that.
We're in the same boat with trying to receive an ambulance. If we didn't order one that was not taken by another department, we'd be 2024 before we could get a new ambulance in.
It's
See, I'm the optimist, and my hope is that by the time this works its way through the process and we actually get to a place where we're bidding, my hope is that, we'll see the supply chains, fulfilling, the orders again. We'll see, some of the labor shortages easing up. Because, we're potentially looking at what, maybe 8 months, 10 months, maybe something like that.
well, then you'll be pleasantly surprised when the bids come in, but you're still going to be carrying a big number because you're not going to get a professional cost estimator right now to say, oh, I think things are going to be okay. I'm going to give you a lower number. And then their reputation is harmed when the opposite happens. And
Do we
I've had
recoup?
long conversations with our estimators about this, and they just said, it's our only answer is to try to give you today's answer, and then they're going to escalate it for 6 months from now, 8 months from now. So they'll give you a bad number, a high number, and then escalate it. And that's their only solution at this point.
Mm.
Now, we tell the municipalities, it's your gamble. If you think it's not going to be that high, then it's your gamble. But we have a hard time with our reputation to say, we're going to join you in that gamble. I don't know.
What type of money on square foot when it was low, and what type of money are we gambling in, for lack of a better term, Never Land?
I was quoting projects at $450 a square foot. Now we're seeing it at 600. It's just, and it's a number that I don't even want to admit. It's something I can't even get a grasp on myself.
So the number that the cost estimator comes up with is the number that we need to put to the residents to vote on to get this building, correct?
They will give you the construction and site work costs, and then we will supplement that with soft costs, which are other project related expenses. And then we will recommend that you carry a contingency on top of that. So it's 3 buckets of money: the hard costs, which is construction and site work; soft costs, which is other project-related fees; and then a contingency.
So Casey, you're right. So that we would take that, that estimate, that total estimate, and absent any other types of funding, we would go to the voters and say, okay, we're looking for a debt exclusion for X amount of money. They vote it, let's say it's a positive vote, then we plow ahead, we finalize the construction documents, we go out to bid, we get bids back, and bids could be higher than the estimate, they could be lower than the estimate, or they could be bunched right around the estimate. And then we pick, assuming they're not all way over the estimate, then we pick, the cheapest, well, essentially the cheapest one, and then we plow forward. So that's kind of how it works. But if it came in, just for example, if it came in, and this happened with the Mitchell School, I think everybody knows, the estimators came back and said I think the construction cost was estimated, the construction cost, not the total budget, but the total budget was 80.6 million. And I think the construction piece, say it was 72 million. And the actual cost came back at something like 50 some odd million. So there was a huge savings on that project, but I think Brian's right. I think that just was like the perfect timing when that project went out, just sort of, luck of the draw. But in that case, then there's a project budget, which is substantially less than what people voted. And we, as a practice, stick with the project budget and get, the most bang for the buck. And then we essentially, give the balance back to the taxpayers. So in the Mitchell School, that's how it's going to work. But it's a little more difficult conversation when, the project comes in over your estimate, then that's a different story. So Brian's right. I mean, you'd never want to, you'd never want to feel lucky and then go and ask the voters for something less than the project budget, or the project estimate rather. You definitely want to be, conservative on that side and ask for the money that you reasonably think it's going to take to build the building the right way. So that's kind of how it works.
One approach that some towns have taken to try to get through this unknown is take it as a 2-step approval process. When you just go out to the town to say, what we need now is design fees. And then the designers and the OPM get together, we design the project, put it out to bid. And at that time, the bids are received and you go back to the voters a second time with the bid number. And you say, now we know the number, here's the number. Your downside there is the voters have to realize that it's a 2-phase approval process. You don't want them to approve the design fees, only never to approve the construction, because then you're out the design fees. But
What kind of money for a design fee on something like this, Brian? Same thing done by square footage?
It is. Design fees for this are probably going to be around $1 million if I'm thinking of round number for OPM and architectural engineering.
But the other thing, it buys us that time if these things open up.
Yeah, and then you go back and say, this is our real number. We have a bid now. And then you go back to town meeting a second time and you say, now we want construction numbers appropriated, but now you're not guessing anymore. You have that number in your pocket. You have to time the bid opening for within 30 days of the town meeting because they only hold their number for so long. But now you're not guessing. You can go to the town for design fees to say, we think it's going to be around X number of dollars, but we're going to refine the design. We're going to do the engineering. We're going to put out the bid. We're going to have the market tell us what the number is going to be. And then when the market responds, then the town has an ability to vote the project up or down.
The 25% contingency that we're adding from 450 a square foot to 600 a square foot does that quarter fill those other 2 buckets? the soft costs and the contingency?
Oh, potentially it could. I don't know if we're ever gonna see 450 again, though. Chief, 450 might be a number that's gone and to never,
Believe it,
to never
even if-
return.
even if it was 500,
Mhm.
that's still 4/5 of the
Yep.
cost. That other fifth might be able to fill those other two, the soft costs and the contingency. That might buy us that space. Because what I'm looking at it is just for the cost at 600 a square foot, you're talking almost $15 million without those other two, the contingency and the soft costs sitting there.
Traditionally, you go to the town once and ask them once. We want a big number to design it, engineer it, bid it, build it.
I'd have to agree with Brian. I think it's a one and done. You don't go back to the well.
The only thing, just from a strategy perspective, the Mitchell School did this because this is how the Mass School Building Authority, wants you to do it. We went to the voters and we asked for whatever it was to do the feasibility stage. And that gives you a gauge, if people are going to vote for that, then you can take that as an indication that they're probably going, more likely than not, going to vote for whatever the final solution is. They don't go and vote $1 million to design without knowing that, the building is going to be 15, 18, $20 million building. So it gives you right up front, it gives you sort of an indication. If it fails, if that initial vote fails, well, then, then we got a problem.
Yeah,
Or if it's a very, very close vote, then you really have to, work hard to get that second vote. But it sort of gives you that, that indication up front. But having said that, my inclination would be just to do a one and done, as Brian talked about.
It's just different project delivery methods. That's I just bring it up because it's kind of a crazy economy right now and trying to predict final costs. It's a good thing you're not going out to bid today. I think Michael's right. I'm hoping 2022 is going to stabilize the market again and then stabilize the supply chains. So put laborers back into the market so we can get a little bit more stable pricing.
Because the supply chain is really going to kill. I mean, that's, if a general contractor has to figure in a supply chain issue or a delay, a delay is what they're going to have to adjust their pricing for. They've got overhead, they've got people they've got to pay, and if brick is all of a sudden you can't find it, and that's going to delay the project, then you've got the contractor has to build that in to cover that cost, cover that delay. So I think that's part of it.
I was just talking to a contractor today. He's just starting a locker room renovation for us at a police headquarters. And it's $1.4 million worth of scope. So it's not a big project. It's taking an existing locker room and demoing it and renovating the locker room. But their solution is they used to buy things as they needed them and bring them to the job site. The approach now is give me storage for stored material, and I'm buying everything in the first 2 weeks. I'm just buying everything. Now, they need space to bring it to the job site or a space to store all that material. But that's how one contractor is trying to solve the solution, and knowing that he's going to order everything, whether he needs it on day one or 7 months from now. He's ordering it now and understanding that some of it's going to get stuck in supply chain and he won't get it. There'll be delays. Some of it he won't need till later, but that's a different approach that contractors are not used to doing. They would place an order knowing that I need it 3-4 weeks from now and then place the order accordingly, but no,
We've run into that on 2 construction plans. 2
Oh,
apartment.
whatever you can grab now, grab it.
Yeah, that old just-in-time philosophy doesn't work
Yeah.
post-COVID.
Yep.
So Brian, tell us a little bit about what our next steps are, what your next steps are, and what we need to do.
I'm just waiting for you being the committee or town or to authorize me to go to a professional cost estimate phase. That's our final phase and completes the package. That professional cost estimate probably will take 3 weeks. We get into a queue. I outsource that to an estimator out of Newton, Massachusetts. So I give him a call, say I'm ready, but then he has to tell me that he's going to be I'm in his queue and he'll be able to get to it depending on how many he has in front of him. So I haven't talked to him recently, but it's typically he could get something in and into the queue and out again in about 3 weeks. At the same time, we'd be developing elevations and a rendering. So we would develop a rendering similar to what you see here, but it would be for your facility. That rendering would be for public display. If you're marketing the project, you want to give the public a pretty picture. So we developed a pretty picture, and the cost estimator works with us on what is that exterior wall? What are the materials? What's the insulation? What value? What's the interior finishes? And we make some assumptions, but it becomes a very detailed report to give you that anticipated hard costs.
Okay. So
Three
you need
to 4 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks. From when you say go, I should be able to come back with that really ugly number. And then you're all going to be just like, and then you have an opportunity to, do we recycle it back into revisions to the schematic plan, revisions to the needs assessment, revisions to the site, or do we just, you accept it and say, this meets our needs, this is what we need for the future, and this is what we should be planning for.
Okay. So in terms of what the decisions you need from us, I don't know if Brian answered all the sort of the outstanding concerns. I know there was some concerns on the second floor space, and did that get answered? I think it did.
I think it did also.
Right.
I think everything we had for concern, including the 5th bay, the vernal pool, the parking spaces, the increase in parking spaces that we were down. Again, I think all of the questions that we originally proposed from the last meeting have been addressed. Is that something we have the contingency cash to do this as far as for a cost estimator to move forward? If we took a vote tonight, we'll take a vote, then it has to go back for finance to get that.
Nope, it's all, and so we're all set with getting through the schematic and getting through the first cost estimate, I think, Brian.
Yes.
So we need essentially consensus here. If you're willing, if you're good with the program and good with the sort of the rough exterior finish that Brian showed, then that lets Brian, and good with everything else, the exterior building, then that lets Brian move forward.
Just
I
got a
think we
quick
need a
question
few
for the
more of the
chief.
committee
if you don't
members
mind.
to.
So what was Casey, you had something?
Quick question for the chief. I brought up last time the gear lockers and the personal lockers. Do you think that you see us in the future going like 2 platoons? You're assigned to Station 2 or you're assigned to Pleasant Street? Or do you think that we need to have more lockers so we don't move in day one completely full?
Even if we moved in day one completely full case, by the time we added to that complement, I think we'd also have to look at that second floor space to add to it.
Okay.
And even looking at that, we have gear lockers at Station 2 that, because of the way we run right now, they're not being used. So we could go to platoon and just, guess what, you're assigned here for a month, and then you'd be switching.
Yeah. Okay. just,
So-
you know, like we talked about last time, you know, while we're building, and I'd hate to see that, I think it was 2,000, 3,000 square feet, you know, be sitting there and then there's no money 5 years, 10 years down the line to expand.
Well, the difficulty wasn't the expansion from interior, if you have the space, it would be to add to the footprint on the outside. That was
Yeah.
one of the reasons to look at that second floor space and add to it.
So would there be a need, and I just throw it out there, you know, sort of picking up what Casey's saying, would there be a need to add locker space in that open area? Do you think there's a need to do that? You know, if you're at, you know, 48, you know, gear lockers now, does it make sense to add even a handful, 10? You know, it's
If you could-
probably,
I think 60 is a good number for gear lockers at a headquarters.
Because
I
40
don't think
is
it's
full
an
right
issue
now,
to add
but-
them. Do we have the space?
so Brian, if we wanted to add another 12, you know, along the lines of what John's talking about, is that doable in the second floor plan?
Right now you have 50 in the plan, right?
You have 50 on the first floor, you have 48 on the second floor. The gear lockers are 50, personnel lockers are 48.
Is there a way to add another 10 gear lockers? I think is more of what they're asking. Actually, personal lockers too. Can we shrink the personal lockers down a little bit to add?
Well, I think one way to add numbers is to reduce the size of lockers, but I don't think that's the right solution. Personally, I think the lockers, once they get smaller, you're not going to use them. And you're going to be frustrated. So I think I should try to get the increased lockers without trying to reduce the size.
So on something like this, what we're gonna run into is if it goes into the bay, we're gonna have the same issues we have with the stuff that we have now. That you're not gonna have the drying areas, you're not gonna have those clean areas.
Right.
And again, it degrades the equipment that much faster. And as Casey and John just both brought up, 60 is a great number, but at the same time, at some point, those two stations will have to run separately, not in a combined manner.
Well, let me take a look. I know 50 was the target number, so that's what we were shooting for. The space needs assessment, I think, says 50, so we're meeting that goal. So if we change the number to 60, let's give it a look.
I think on the second floor where the personal lockers are, correct?
Yes.
So I don't think that would be an issue if we had to add some, because we had the room up there. I think putting more gear lockers would be most important for the first floor.
Okay.
Excellent. All
So
right,
is this something? Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Chief.
Is this something we can add in at the same time, once it's added, if we agree, it can be a poll vote of the committee? As far as a meeting type of thing? So we're basically the outside footprint of the station is complete. We're looking to add 10 gear lockers. If Brian can find that space, he would add. If he can't, it's kind of a moot point at that point. So is that something we could take a poll vote at that point to move forward with the cost estimator?
I don't think the difference in numbers of lockers is really going to affect the work he has to do as a cost estimator. We could be making that decision at the same time he's doing this as cost estimate. He changes the number from 50 to 60 and his estimate changes slightly.
So it's basically insignificant then.
Yeah.
So we could take, if we did a poll vote for the committee to do that with the people that aren't here this evening, rather than voting after the fact. Carlton, I do see your hand up. Is that something, Mike, would you be okay to take Carlton's question?
Sure.
Oh, thank you, Chief. I just had 3 areas. From the energy efficiency perspective, how much weight will the roof be able to hold? And the reason I'm asking is that there is, and Michael knows about this, there is a potential for a new type of wind harvesting device that could feed that outback building or in other places. So then it weighs 500 pounds, 600 pounds for a single one, and could supply all the energy needed for that other building. So that kind of contingency, I think we need to think about. I'm not talking solar, I'm talking small wind. So that kind of thing's of interest. The other thing I have is if you go into bricks, please cost in Styles and Hart bricks from Bridgewater. We have a long history of using those bricks here in town. And the other piece is I've been playing around with the site in Google a little bit, as I want to do since I'm retired. And I think that curb cut that's there now, I don't know if the most recent design you showed will use part of that curb cut or not. But if not, you could use that for public parking, and then you can run a walking trail, about a 0.6 of a mile walking trail that would go up along the left side of the current plan in the upland area all the way and wind around the back. And then I'm confused by the wetlands delineation, because when I look at that site, it's pretty flat down in the lower part. Over here, over on the left side where the delineation goes in from the west side of the lot.
Here.
That all is not very much different elevation than the rest, but I'm thinking that you could have a walking trail go around the exterior of this, come across the back of the lot, and then tie into that trail. And I can send you one of my conceptual thoughts about how to do that, if that's okay. But as you're doing this, even though that might not be paid for by the project, that kind of could be paid for from a couple of other sources. Thinking about that trail being longer might be a good public sale for this site. So I can send you those ideas.
The area that was filled along Pleasant Street is the area that's just shown right here, with this wetland line is coming onto this property. And that's the area that's currently filled. So we are just the right side of that fill area.
So that's a parking lot that was put in it was voted in and built by the highway department in 2004 or 5. And that could hold about 6 to 8 cars easily. And I'm thinking walking paths going to the left and to the right from there, along the left side of the schematic here on the upland. So I'll send you that. I'll send that to Matt or to Michael. Who should I send it? Because I think we need to have that already incorporated as part of the public sale for recreational.
Carlton, on the what you were talking about for the power for the back roof, is that more weight than what solar panels would be? Because roofs now have to be,
It's
roofs have to
500
be constructed to handle that weight.
It's 580 pounds total. So, and he spreads it over, I think it's a 3 foot by 3 foot square. So the calculations are that it would be, and they typically tie it into the plan is to tie it into the framing of the building. But I'm looking at it on the bigger building too. And it runs incredibly quietly. It can deliver, theoretically right now it's designed to deliver 110 AC, 220. It can deliver up to 400, whatever the right units are, 100, 200, or 400. So it's customizable in how much energy it produces and delivers. But I'm just thinking that as an alternative.
Do you think there's is there a wind study that's been done in that area? That I'm just concerned that that's sort of in a bit of a hole that might not get.
It could be sheltered, but you can always, put it up on a pole higher. But my concern is just making sure the weight bearing roofs, the roofs are sufficiently weight bearing to handle a couple of those devices.
If that was,
It doesn't sound like a big load. 500.
if that was put on the tower, Brian, with the size of the tower, could 2 of those be put on the tower? That's almost 3 floors tall, correct?
That's your tallest point on the site. Yeah.
So that you would get the most wind from that location if you could have one on each end of the hip roof.
Incorporate it that way. Yeah. I'm just trying to make sure we think about that alternative to deliver almost, especially the wind is harvested in the fall and winter time more efficiently than in the summertime. And in the fall, that's when you get the big storms through and stuff. But anyway, Michael, you could share I don't know if we recorded that meeting or not, but it's just a concept that I don't want to lose. I'm doing this as the Energy Chair Committee Chair for the town.
No, I think that's good. On two things, Carlton, if you want to send me the concept for the trail, I'll forward that along to the committee and Brian. I agree on the wind, either wind or solar, quite frankly. I mean, it should be solar ready, I assume, or for that matter, wind ready as well. So that kind of makes sense.
Thank you. Those were my two major, I like the metal roof thing, so myself. And I like number 9. I'm done.
Good.
Thanks.
Seems like consensus.
Thank you.
All right, so Brian, going back to what we need to give you, I want to make sure that you've got everything you need. And if we're going to release Brian, I'll leave it up to the committee if we're going to release Brian to go ahead with the cost estimate. Or if we need a little more time, that's fine too, but I just want to make sure that Brian gets some direction.
I would vote for the cost estimate.
Okay. John Schatz, you comfortable with that?
Absolutely.
Casey,
Yes.
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
All right. Well, we didn't take an official vote, but I think by consensus, I think we're ready for that step. And Brian, you're going to look to see, at least on a conceptual level, whether or not we can do 60 gear lockers without too much of a reconfiguration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll incorporate that as close to that 60 as I can get without completely bastardizing the plan.
Good.
Put them on the second floor. We'll make the young guys run up and down the stairs.
Actually, the chief doesn't really need an office, right?
He'll get a closet.
Don't worry, he's not going to be here.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else? I think we covered everything.
Thanks for your input.
Thank you.
It's really, do you have everything you need? That's my question to you. Because I don't want you to get into a cost estimate with a solution that you're really not comfortable with. But I like what's on paper, and I think it meets that space needs assessment that you put a lot of time into. So it's really a question to you. If you're comfortable, then all I need is just an email, Michael, to say you're authorized to proceed to professional cost estimate.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's give it overnight and into tomorrow. If anybody thinks we forgot anything, just let me or Brian or Chief know. And by what is tomorrow? Jesus, Wednesday. By Thursday morning, I'll send Brian an email, and unless I hear otherwise, we'll just release him and let him get the cost estimate. That sound like a good plan? Excellent. All right. Anybody have anything else? I don't want to tie people up all evening. All right, Brian, you're good?
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, thanks, everybody. Enjoy the evening.